Welcome to the Limitless Potential podcast, where together we will dive into the personal, business, and career-rich tips, techniques, stories, and experiences of some incredibly successful and inspirational people, each with their own perspectives and journeys, and each with golden nuggets of wisdom which might just change your life. I'm Tracy Stone, and I'm a master trainer in a number of career supercharging techniques, a transformational coach, international best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and a woman discovering and evolving my very own limitless potential day by day.
Yoga and more play.
Hi everybody, and welcome back for another episode of the Limitless Potential podcast. Today I'm delighted to welcome the amazing Pat Labez, who joins us from New York. Pat is a lifelong advocate for seniors, who many call the joyful boomer. She's an award-winning international best-selling author, actress, producer, and speaker who works with older adults to amplify joy and help restore, repurpose, and redefine retirement through the arts. She was a certified administrator of a residential care facility for the elderly, receiving community recognition for excellence in healthcare services, and served as Director of Human Resources and Volunteer Services for the American Red Cross of Ventura County, California. She combines her professional life experiences with her love of the performing arts and as founder of the Third Act Encore. Pat's television work began in Hawaii over 30 years ago, and in her 60s, following her overcoming a brain tumor, she returned to show business with TV roles on Blue Bloods, New Amsterdam, and many others, as well as film, theatre, and musical shows as a producer or a performer. She has served on many senior advisory volunteer programs, including the Alzheimer's Association. Pat and her associates help families to navigate through the challenges that many face in retirement so they can experience their own powerful third act, that period of life where wisdom, self-actualization, and leaving a legacy become increasingly important. She is also the Regional Director for Global Woman Club New York. What can Pat not do? She is amazing, and that's why she's here with us today to talk about her journey and how she taps into her very own limitless potential. Welcome, Pat, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be with you, Tracy.
Well, look, let's get stuck in because, again, there's just amazing, juicy things to cover here. So, Pat, as we love to start at the beginning with things, let's go back and tell us what life was like for you before you were an actress, before you were the amazing woman that you are today. What was life like for you growing up as a little girl?
Well, I was born in the Philippines, and my parents, we traveled a lot, moved around a lot because we were involved, and my folks were involved in community development programs at various some of them were remote. So every other year we'd be in the city back in Manila, and every other year we'd go out into these provinces and villages out there and try to help folks become more self-sufficient. And that was their lives. And then migrated to Hawaii, and I grew up there. I was 12 years old, and so it's been an interesting blending of cultures, if you will, and continued to move around. Actually, from Hawaii, I've moved to California, and now I'm in the East Coast, Virginia, and New York, and everything in between. But I think that whole process from childhood into adulthood has really helped me become resilient. Bloom where you're planted, they say, right? And when I think back, a lot of it has to do with the fact that kind of much more like military families, I guess. We moved around a lot. And I think gaining an appreciation of the diversity in life, no matter where you are, socioeconomic diversity, cultural diversity, language, you name it, because even in the Philippines, there's 87 different dialects. So, just because you're Filipino doesn't mean each one can communicate with each other if they don't know each other's dialect. So it's an interesting,
That's
interesting way
incredible.
to grow up. Yeah.
Was it easy or difficult, or how did you handle that transition of going from Manila to Hawaii?
Um, Gosh, again, because I think even in the Philippines, we moved around so much. It was just kind of one of those where, okay, I've got to learn American way. We've got to, you've got to do everything yourself now. Philippines, we kind of had a lot of help to get through the daily life. Now you've got to learn your own cooking and your own, laundry and yeah. But interestingly, in terms of comparison, a friend of my parents, my parents would be 106 by now if they were still alive. But one of their friends in her 80s became a Facebook friend very recently. And I share this with you because it brought back parts of my childhood, because I hadn't seen her in decades. And she's seeing me do all of these things. And she made a comment about being a moxie, because I had done this TV interview in a moxie. And okay, so I said, what's a moxie? Gusto and just, determination to do things and all of that. She says, yeah, you're doing so much. She says, it's nice that you're finally doing that. And I said, yeah, I was a quiet one. I was quite shy. I'm the youngest of 9 and along with a lot of overachievers as siblings. And I said, yeah, I was a quiet one. And she says, no, you were the invisible one.
Wow.
And that really hit me because it's true. My parents were very involved in politics and again, community service, which was wonderful. But I was a quiet one. And she said, no, you were the invisible one. And it hit me that it's true. And here I am, I'm pushing 65, will be on Medicare very soon. And, I'm out there doing things, not so much for me, but really to help elevate other folks to, this is our third act of life, right? So it's wonderful to be able to have made that transition. And theater and acting helped a lot in that regard, because when you're shy and kind of an introvert, it's very difficult to get yourself out there unless for me, it's taking on another role, right? And that's where the acting part kind of comes into play.
And I think, Pat, many people would say shy, introvert, acting. How
Yes.
does that work out?
Yes, but you'll find a lot of wonderful actors. Robin Williams, he was a hoot who is out there, right? Yeah, he's in person. He was very quiet, and Robert De Niro, another wonderful actor. I'm told, I haven't met him, but I'm told he's very quiet. And many I find, as I've met other folks, they do tend to be introverted, and acting kind of. For me personally, acting allows you to be able to, share a part of you that perhaps you wouldn't otherwise.
Yes.
Same thing with speaking. Now that I'm into speaking, acting is one thing when you're, somebody gives you a script and you become that character. It's a little easier to kind of separate yourself from that, even if you're very close to it, speaking and opening up that vulnerability is a whole nother level that I'm, still kind of learning. But yeah, it's a good tool to have, no matter whether you choose to do it professionally or just in life. I think,
Yeah, of course.
navigating through life.
So how did you get into that? I mean, you don't necessarily have to say, well, I started acting here, but what was the journey to that? Because it probably wasn't the first thing that you happened on.
No, actually, again, my older siblings were very much in the limelight, would dance and stuff. And I'd perform, dancing is, a whole other thing, Philippine cultural dances and stuff. Um, in Hawaii, in high school, actually, my sister was involved in theater, and we had the best theatrical drama department in the islands and would perform for all of the schools there. And I remember seeing Camelot. And then I'm going, Camelot, wow. And it was quite a grand production. Said, oh, I want to be there. Maybe the next show was going to be Sound of Music. I said, oh, I've always actually growing up, I wanted to be a nun. And so I said, oh, this is my opportunity to be a nun. Maybe I can be one of the nuns back there. I'd be so happy. And even if I just work backstage just to be part of putting the show together, it's yeah. I found that kind of intriguing. And so I auditioned for the first time in my life. I went out there and just belted out a song to audition, and I got the part of Liesel. And I was 16 going on 17. And
Perfect.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of how it started. And then the next year we did West Side Story and got Maria, that part. And again, serendipity. But that's really how it started in terms of, wow, you get to be somebody else. And I think that, again, that helped me in terms of just daily life of coming out of the shell, so to speak. And then that was the end of it. And in my late 20s, after a failed marriage, kind of trying to reconnect with who I am, who I was, I got involved in community theater and did The World of Susie Wong. And the casting director and talent agent, casting director for Magnum PI was there and came backstage and said, have you ever done television? I said, no. So it's really funny, things just kind of happen. And from there, I started doing, shows that were in Hawaii. Back then in the 80s, Magnum PI, Jake and the Fat Man, Island Sun with Richard Chamberlain, did some commercials out there. And then I was 34, got married, and I decided, okay, it's time to grow up. Or so I thought, and kind of retired that. And it so happened at about that time, my mother ended up with Alzheimer's. And so as it is with many families, that kind of, you get a whole nother reality check about life and what do we do? How do we pay for this? And how do we take care of her? And so that got me into the world of long-term care. And then ended up getting my, administrator's license certification and help with management of an assisted living community in California. Loved it because my parents were in Hawaii. I was in California. At that point, I had my daughter. I had my daughter at 40. I'm late bloomer with everything in life. But then the residents, of course, became her extended family, our extended family, kind of a proxy grandparents, if you will. So it actually allowed, that family, that community again. But it's also very difficult because as you lose them, you get very attached to these folks. It's interesting. And then I got into, I'm quite an advocate for volunteerism. Actually, do you know they've done studies that folks who volunteer actually live longer lives for the most part? They said on average an extra 7 years, or there were some studies done about that. I said, really? And so
that makes sense though as well, doesn't it? It really does make sense because mindset is a huge part.
Yes.
What you have in your heart, what you do with your time, with your life has, I think, a huge impact on your lifestyle and the length and quality of your life.
Yes. And I think, and so that's part of what I really, even to this day, is, as we get older, sometimes folks, especially get into your 60s, 70s, and you think, oh, it's over, you're kind of just waiting. And why? You have so much wisdom and experience that you can give back. And so with the Red Cross, with volunteer services, always try to find the gifts, each person that chooses to share their time, talents, and resources in service of our community at large is kind of really learning what are their strengths. And every organization, we can always, everybody think, oh, American Red Cross is disaster services. I can't go out there and help typhoon or, hurricane. No, we need people to answer phones. We need folks to, and we need folks to write. That's when, we launched, back then we didn't even know about what do you call online newsletters, right? We need technology. I mean, a lot of these organizations are rely on funding from private funding, or and the generosity of folks, and otherwise they can't do the services that they provide. So volunteers are able to really make a difference, just maybe not out there in the limelight, but you are making a difference, in other ways, and it's really, really needed. So even now, I think that that's a big part of the living a fulfilling life.
I like that a lot.
You're making a difference somehow.
So what came next for you? How long were you in the home looking after these amazing people that you were
quite a bit, several years. And what happened in preparation of retirement, so we thought, we moved to Austin, Texas. And as it turns out, my sister got ill with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and she lives in outside DC in Virginia. And so I was kind of the go-to person within the family. As the youngest of 9, we had lost other siblings, and every time somebody needed something, I called Pat. And so I got to the East Coast, and right about the same time, my husband also started working in New York. And so I was kind of juggling the 3 households. She was given 1 to 3 months to live with 2 types of cancer, pancreatic and breast. She lived 4.5 years. And so that's what got me to the East Coast. And right about the time when my daughter was going to graduate high school, I knew that that was another chapter in life, and I needed to be an empty nester, and got back into volunteering, but I was still taking care of my sister. That was first and foremost. My husband also, was dealing with some back things and a lot of healthcare stuff going on. And so I decided to volunteer with a creative side this time, not long-term care, because I felt that I was already living that, and I wanted to be more creative, and got into a film lab in support of other artists, the next generation. In the process of doing that, I was told, well, you're doing so much, why don't you put your headshot in our directory? I didn't even know they had a directory. And I said, I hadn't planned on getting back into acting. I'm 60 years old, this is back then. And they said, no, do it anyway. And within a week, I got a call to audition for a part of a mom who's dying of cancer. And, with 2 siblings, kind of estranged from each other. And so I felt like that wasn't even acting. I'm living it. I'm taking care of my sister, right? And dealing with cancer. And right about that time, actually, that's when I was also diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so I opted not to have it operated on, and just kind of gone the holistic way. And faith had a lot to do with it. But decided I'm just going to try to live my life as best I can. And volunteer with the AARP is for Association for Retired People. And so, just continued to give back. And so that kind of got things started with getting back into show business by accident. It actually won some awards. And then from there, seeing that, I met a group of folks, new friends in New York, and started doing shows. And I kind of got into this thing somewhere in there. After the passing of another family member, brother-in-law, I realized I'd forgotten to do an MRI. And my doctor says, we can't find a tumor. It's undetectable.
Wow.
Yeah, when you're told that and you have no understanding of how that happens, it just kind of gives life new meaning. So
that's
I got
amazing, Pat. I mean, that deserves a whole moment of congratulations, because you didn't do treatment. You just carried on and did it through faith and prayer and mindset, and and just carrying on with life.
Yeah. I did do holistic ways, and I did do supplements, but um, a lot of it is fake. I don't know. I don't know. Now, I can't, it's not, it wasn't, don't know if it was cancer because they kept pushing to have it removed, right? Surgery. Now, I had had a brother who died of brain cancer, and that's what put me on higher risk.
Mhm.
That and my sister dealing with stage 4 pancreatic. We've had, you know, um, skin cancer in the family, breast cancer, you name it. But it was my brother's brain cancer that also, when he was only 18 when he died. But that vision was so vivid in my mind, I just didn't want to go through that.
Mhm.
And I kind of just convinced myself, well, I'm not afraid to die. So it is what it is. And they kept saying, well, even if it's benign, we need to take it out because it's going to push on your brain. And so well, I'll deal with it as it comes. And just kind of carried on because all of these things were coming up. And all of a sudden I'm, signed up with a manager and he's sending me on auditions and I'm doing, this show and that show. And also being part, I actually produced a short film, also inspired by true stories, friends, and about love, and really being part of this creative process was like giving birth to different projects, to different children, right? And it was just wonderful to be a part of that. And I started saying, why not? Also, I think sometimes we go through these things and you realize that, well, I convinced myself I'm not afraid to die. And I really am not. I'm at peace with all that. There's that other part. I realized maybe I was afraid to live, as many of us are.
Indeed.
You're afraid to fail. You're afraid of what other people are going to say. I mean, I was kind of like, I had folks, I had friends who were saying, you're in your 60s, we're all the same. We all went to high school together. How are you that you're still doing this? And I'm kind of, you know what? I got to the point where, as crazy as it sounds, why not? If the opportunity is there, And my sister said before she left us here, because I wasn't going to do the film. And I said, I don't want to leave. She said, I'll be fine. She says, follow your destiny. You were meant to do that. I didn't even believe it, right? But when things happen that sometimes defies logic, and you meet certain people, I've come to this place of just acceptance, and you meet wonderful people along the way. And there's a reason, all these coincidences sometimes that we find ourselves in, I think are all just, opportunities and angels on earth, really, that help to guide us in this journey. And that's what I'm all about, is finding joy in the journey. There's they say the first act of life is where we learn the skills to navigate through life. And the second act is when, we focus on our career, marriage, kids, family. Some will say divorce, but family. And the third act is really the importance of we're searching for that wisdom, that pursuit of, self-actualization and leaving some kind of a legacy. And you start thinking, what else can I do? What has life been? What to give it meaning? And each one of us has a story. Each one, and it's funny because one of the volunteer organizations that I did 20 years ago was volunteering for hospice services, and that really, you that will open up your eyes. And back then, we had cassette tapes. And I would just say, can you want to share something here? They will give it to your family. And the responses from kids, from family members, nieces, said, guys, I never knew that about mom, never knew that about, my aunt. And how sad. And as when my parents passed away, I realized, yeah, whatever stories they had, and they were part of some pretty historical periods and, on earth, what they were involved in, going, wow, that goes with them unless it's written somewhere or, taped somewhere, right? You leave it. So the younger generation has it. And so that's part of what I'm doing today with this third act encore is really encouraging folks to even share a snippet, a little chapter in life that's really quite special that maybe they've never shared. My sister, who is now 82 years old, I went to visit her. She says, Mom, Pat, I'm forgetting things.
Mm.
And so I was kind of triggering some periods in life, but I remembered she would tell a story about this, that, and the other. And her son was sitting right there, my nephew, and said, gosh, I never heard this first time I heard about that. And how wonderful. It was so enlightening, and it was so just warm to see that another layer of bonding, of understanding each other based on your life experiences. And this is why, what took you to certain decisions in life.
That's amazing and so important. That's that legacy of history that we're able to leave is so vital. And legacy comes up very often in the conversations I have with people. We're becoming more aware of it instead of just living life now for us. It's becoming very consciously aware of what is it that I am handing on to the next generation, and the next generation, whether it is financially handing something on, stories and history handing something on, whatever it is, being aware that it's important for us to know that we're part of a stream, and it's all washing down to the next generations. It's all flowing through, but we don't always capture those stories. And I know from losing my dad to dementia nearly 2 years ago, we captured a lot of things, our own little tales about dad and his little funny stories, but there's a lot more that we didn't get. And you don't get that do-over. You don't get that chance again.
It's not a dress rehearsal, is it?
No. So how would you advise people, Pat, to go about capturing those stories for posterity, for legacy?
Well, coming from a family of writers, it's kind of ironic. I know my parents were both journalists, right? And they've always wanted to write a book and never got around to it, and yet they've done, hundreds and thousands of articles out there for others. And many of us, you have that. I never saw myself as a writer. You just don't think it. But that's one way, just writing it down. And sometimes it's daunting. You've written a book. And to write your own book can be, and it's a big task, and that in itself can stop folks on their track. Like it's too much, So I would encourage even just writing, and that's why I love what I'm doing right now is Third Act Encore, Journeys of a Lifetime. Share just a chapter of life. That gets a little bit easier. Think back on what's the little thing that you may not have really shared a whole, or you might have, but you really want to, have that to be remembered. Somewhere. Start with that.
And I think a lot of people underestimate the value of the journey they've had and the stories they have to tell. A lot of people say, I haven't had an interesting life.
Yes, I hear that.
How would you help them, or how do you help them to kind of overcome that and realize, oh my God, I have things to share?
Oh, there is. Sometimes it's just kind of taking their back, in their childhood. Even somebody who says, well, oh yeah, I had a simple life. I lived on a farm. Okay, what was that life like? What was that all about? How did you do your farming then versus what we're doing now, right? Folks who've lived through the Great Depression. I had residents who were part of World War II, for example, and many, he had a Purple Heart. And he had a hard time talking about that experience until one time my husband kind of saw the ribbons and stuff and sparked that interest. And all of a sudden, wow, somebody actually recognized this.
Mm.
You know. And then he started opening up, about that. I had somebody else who was in an internment camp, Japanese American.
Mm.
And that story, for a long time, he didn't want to talk about it. And just encouraging that, just that curiosity. I think if they know that you're genuinely interested in their story, or if that story can actually make an impact and inspire another generation, perhaps. Oh, because I was right there. I was like, I meet folks that have platforms that meet millions of people, thousands and millions of people. I work one-on-one. I work with seniors, and I'm kind of used to being more behind the scenes. I like to help others and kind of help make things happen. I don't need to be, in front there. And it's funny because just recently, less than a month ago, I came off a stage and wondering, like, gosh, I hope I made sense, because to me, this is just life. I'm just making the most of what I have while we can, And I was met at the bottom of the stage. I had 4 women stop and say, thank you. Thank you for sharing that part of your life. Because that spoke to me. Now I spoke about, while your heart is beating, the beat goes on. And while the beat goes on, we can still do things, you don't give up. You keep on keeping on. And one of them similarly had a brain tumor that came back. And she said, yeah, now I kind of I'll feel my heart beat. It's something as small as that, and you and I will take it for granted, right? What do you mean? What's a big deal? But just sharing that message and what you went through, your journey, can actually make a difference in that one person. And say, yeah, now I'm going to go and continue and do these things, all of this stuff that I thought was too late. Now I'm going to go do it. Now it's got that ripple effect. That person is going to do all of these wonderful, incredible things. And you just touched that one life. It's the same: to the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world, right?
Love that.
And I stress it in long-term care, because our caregivers, right?
Mm.
They're the unsung heroes. They're the ones that make a difference one-on-one, taking care of each resident, each person. And what I found, like with long-term care, with seniors, you have the activities of daily living. Yes, we need to make sure, you're bathing, you're dressing, you're eating properly, right? You're able to walk, and you're able to go from point A to point B, transferring. But beyond that, and we have care managers, caregivers that can help you with that. But beyond that, oftentimes what's forgotten is the soul. What feeds the soul? What hasn't been tapped that needs to come out?
Mm. And
whether they can move or not. I had a doctor whose mind was still very sharp, but his body was no longer functioning, and it was very frustrating. And when that happens, a lot of times they lash out in anger. They're angry with the world, right? Why? Because they're understanding still, with dementia, Alzheimer's, you're kind of in your own world. You're in that moment. In many ways, it's harder when you're still very sharp, but you can't quite do things that you want to do. You feel the limitations, the physical limitations. But if you just share that wisdom, what other things or life lessons that you might be able to share with others, that becomes limitless.
it really does. And you've done this so many times through your life, realizing it first for yourself, but then helping other people to realize how important it is to step into that notion of why not? Or that
Yes.
notion of, yeah, let's capture that story, that journey. You are also a published author. You have shared very personal parts of your story and your journey. And I know that a great part of that is going to be because of the impact it can have. And if it can help just one person or two people or three people to connect with them, to think, why not?
Yes.
Instead of
Yes.
why. So what was that journey like for you, deciding to kind of bare your very personal soul to help other people?
Yeah, I was going through a very dark time, beginning of 2021, when I had all these big plans of helping a very dear friend of mine. And somehow that relationship was shattered. And it pained me. So it was like losing another sister, you know, and it was so painful. And at the same time, I was grieving still for my sister, Joy, who that was like her 5th year anniversary. And we share this right in your book of grief, dealing with grief. And because I had actually told her, she was kind of the family historian, and I knew she had a binder of stories about my parents, clippings, news clippings, and things. And my brother, had passed away. He was going to take on that task. He passed away at 54, so she took that on. And here she was 58 diagnosed. She was now 62. She passed away. So before she passed away, I remember seeing her with looking at that book, and I said, "It's okay, Joy. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to get this done and really share some of this. This is what our parents wanted to do. Just share some of that stuff. And our nephews, nieces, the younger ones don't really know the extent, right?" And so I shifted my energy. I said, "Okay, there's a reason for all of this, and maybe I need to start looking at writing as I promised." And I felt like I was forgetting parts of things. And I think I shared this with in my book, with this flick, with a flick of a switch, life can change. And coincidentally, or again, coincidence, I don't know. I think somebody whispered in my ear, another friend of mine, Kate, out of the blue, just said, and I don't even know her, I know her through social media, Facebook friend. And she just said, "Pat, you need to write your story." And I thought, that's what I need to do, is to start writing. And that's where Find Joy in the Journey came to pass, and meeting you, because Ignite Possibilities. I love the title, Ignite Possibilities. I said, yes, the heart is beating. We go on. I can move, because there was a period of time when I couldn't move. I was in so much pain. And sometimes we have to look back. I always think, yeah, things could be better. Life can, things didn't quite go the way we wanted. But you know what? Things can always be worse. There's always somebody else. Or there were times in life that we forget that we were in worse condition. And I had to look at that. I said, oh, yeah, I remember. And I couldn't even get off the floor because I was in so much pain, couldn't move, couldn't drive. And what am I complaining about? Or like Nick, I just saw him last week, no arms, no legs, and he's living a full life. What excuse do we have, right?
So you bare your soul, and you put it into the words. So you added a beautiful story into the book that you've just referenced, Ignite Possibilities. It's an anthology book with 30 some authors. You wrote it, I wrote a story in that book as well. And this was how we met. But the the touching nature, the soul connection that you make in that story is just so beautiful and so raw and so real. Um, and you're so right. People should be writing down what they have lived. You don't
Yes.
have to have it published in a book, but write
No, you
it down.
don't. Just write it down, or tape it if that's easier, somewhere to where somebody can, make that happen. And yeah, so many times I've had folks. It's wonderful. I have a friend of mine said, "Yeah, I guess I I've always wanted to act. I thought it was too late. And she's in her 30s. Are you kidding me? But a friend of mine actually is back up, you know, acting again and doing commercials and stuff in Hawaii. And I'm so happy. And isn't it wonderful to be part of that? But when I was writing that book, Find Joy on the Journey, I've had a lot of losses in my lifetime, not just within my family, but even in the workplace, right? Being in long-term care. When my sister passed away, I've never been asked if I wanted to flick that switch in the crematory. That's kind of morbid, isn't it? I said, who wouldn't want to do that? And even identifying her was like so strange because I didn't even recognize her. So when I identify her, she's right here. And you realize that that's, this is a vessel. This is right. The packaging. Once the soul is gone, it's gone.
Mm.
And we're here for just a short period of time. And when you flick that switch at the end of it, they whisk her away, and that's it. And that's it. That's it. So while we're here, we're able to do something in whatever capacity. Why not?
Why not? And it's the why not that got you in your 60s back into acting when other people are taking a step back and saying, I'm ready to, go and golf a little bit, or I'm going to spend my time playing cards, bowls with my friends.
It's tough because as we get older, we also, we go through a lot of losses, don't we? And I love your book. Thank you for writing that. Love remains. I don't have it with me, but yeah, how to deal with grief, and those are all practical tools that you've shared with others. And what an honor to be a part of that.
And you have very kindly shared your journey of loss, of losing your beautiful sister Joy, as part of that. And I know that what you have shared from the heart in there will help so many people, because losing someone is very, very hard. And it's only when you get to a certain stage in life for most people that you start to lose important people.
Yes.
But we don't come equipped for it. We don't have the skills, the techniques to help ourselves to cope with that loss. Just share for the listeners, if you will, some of your advice of how to navigate loss. And again, loss might be that someone has passed on, like your beautiful sister Joy, or it might be the loss of a relationship. It's still grief. What's your advice to people?
Wow. For one thing, I think it's really important to reach out to somebody else. It's important to kind of talk about things, be in a community that you connect with, right? And just understanding. I believe this things happen for a reason, because out of the ashes, if you will, of those broken plans, none of this where I am today with writing and meeting you and meeting none of this would have happened if that huge disappointment hadn't happened. If getting my heart broken, didn't happen. What I felt was a betrayal of trust. I was so hurt that somebody could think I could do certain things, when I was so, it was what I was doing when I was out of love. That's rough, it's hard to swallow.
And this was the friendship that kind of fell asunder, wasn't it?
But from that, you realize, stepping back now, things happen for a reason. And instead of that, I've had even more beautiful friendships. have grown out of that. And beautiful experiences, and this thing of writing, and really kind of, I realized that there's just so much more that we can do in touching other people, who are ready, willing, and able to also accept you, for who you are. And yeah, just not forgetting to live, because how many times I've had this happen. We can go to sleep and not wake up, right? I mean, my brother passed away at 18. I mean, the future is promised to no one, regardless of age, regardless of where we are in life. And so, while I think goals and planning for the future and all those are all very important, because it's true, you kind of need to know where you want to be, but let's not lose sight of what's in front of us, because the future may never come as we had planned. My sister and I had big plans about retirement. We talked about traveling and doing all these wonderful things, and that never happened, right? How often, like I said,
like this is what happens when you're making other plans.
Yes, life, exactly. I've had 3 siblings, boom, suddenly just go. My dad had a heart attack, same thing, Yeah, I had a friend who was coming to my book signing last year and was coming from Washington, D.C. to New York and celebrate with us, and he was going to go to Malaysia and all that, and on his way, had a massive heart attack, And so that just brings things to the forefront. You don't forget today. This is, again, it's a, say, with our seniors, like 10,000 people turn 65 every single day. And for many of us, it's kind of it's a big change, and it's a new chapter in life, and oftentimes, and understandably, the sandwich generation, you have a hard time juggling, taking care of aging parents and your career and your family and all of that. It's rough, but there are resources out there that you can go to.
For you, Pat, personally for you, what do you think are whether it's the beliefs or the habits that have helped to lift you up and give you that strength to continuously say why not in the aftermath of a lot of sadness and a lot of grief in your life? You still have this amazing positivity and can-do attitude. So what are the beliefs or the habits that bring you into that despite the grief?
The very basic one. So raise your hand, put it over your heart. Okay, it's still beating. Have that quiet moment. I said, okay, I'm still here. So why not? What else haven't I done that I wanted to do? And why not do it now? What's keeping me? What's stopping me? Who can I help? Help one person every day. Who can I help today? Even if it's just one person, that makes a difference, because it means you're making an impact. You don't have to do all this grand stuff. What gives me joy? And think back on what regardless of what people say. Actually, a friend of mine said, oh, you need to start singing. I was already 60. I said, oh no, I haven't sung since high school. That West Side Story. And I said, no, I don't even sing in the shower anymore, But I remember, yeah, that's kind of fun. And the moment you allow yourself to do that, even if, you think you might make a fool of yourself, so what? If you're having fun, it's your journey. It's your journey, right?
I love that. And, when we have those moments that we think, I'm making a fool of myself, we can sometimes stop, or usually maybe stop ourselves from stepping into that and being brave and doing the thing that might look foolish.
Yes.
But my gosh, when we do it, the feeling of release, of freedom, of joy is just unbeatable. And what do other people see when we do that? When we do that singing or were brave to step forward and do something, they don't see someone who's being foolish. They look at that person, they look at you, Pat, they look at anyone who is stepping forward and stepping up, and they say, wow, that's amazing. I wish I was that brave. They don't see foolish.
You're right, though, and I don't think I don't think I realized it until recently. You're right, and because there's so many of us that just wish, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. I'd like to do that. Why not? As my thing. Okay, so what? Why not? So what if you aren't perfect? So what? You're find joy in the journey. That's my thing. Find joy. You know. What was that? A joyful heart is a beat of life, is what I say. So you just kind of have to remind one. And I still have those moments of dark times. And again, it's so easy to get caught up. The sadness, the grief of this, that, and there's certain things happening, but we can't allow ourselves to stay there in that space for too long. Activity is the best thing. The moment you get busy, you're doing something productive. That's when you realize, oh, I'm making a difference. Oh, I cleared up the table. Yeah, I made a difference. But even better when you actually pick up the phone and call somebody, So that part of getting back into singing, I had a group of friends, which is great. Maria, thank you for, Bobby, and, while it's there. And I'm glad I did it because now Bobby passed away, early this year. And, if I hadn't done that, now I have these beautiful memories of, wow, that was a special chapter in life, that I will always, always cherish.
I love that so much.
And while we encourage the young ones, the next generation, right, and encourage them to go for their dreams, to not stop, and all of that, we shouldn't forget that what about us? Have we done things that we thought would be kind of fun to do, but thought maybe, oh, that's kind of silly, even if it's learning technology, why not? That's on my to-do list, to be better at it. We can always be better versions of ourselves, and regardless of what that is. But yeah, just kind of really just asking yourself, tapping into your soul of what it is, and even if just jotting down some notes. And it's good to remember. Good to remember.
It's good to remember, and as you say, it's good to be active. So do something. So even if you're feeling down in the dumps for whatever is going on in life, even though you don't feel like getting up off of the sofa, get up and do something. And it can be as little as you said, as clear the table. Go and do something. It can
go out and get some fresh air while you can. The fact that you can even walk out, is a gift.
It is a gift. Put on music, do something, anything, do something active for you.
And again, there's always what you'll find, there's always somebody else who's in a worse predicament. And if you can touch that one life, that's a gift, right?
So find
something a gift that keeps on giving. So as long as we're here, we're able to give somehow, and hopefully with good, and not there's enough critics in the world,
For sure.
It's easy to tear down dreams. It's don't want to go there. Let's just try to, because life isn't perfect, is it? We're not. Nobody's perfect.
No.
And so, but we can lift each other up, in whatever way we can, and just live with joy while we can.
And it's always within our power to find someone to help to lift up.
Yes.
Why not? And Pat, I think that is our resounding thought for today. Why not? And more people should be tapping into their own why not.
And that's why I got into the third act encore. Encore is, come on, let's do it again. Let's try to do it again. Bravo. And sometimes we do it, the encore is even better sometimes, right? The encore is better than the
first run.
The first run. Actually, I saw a study saying actually folks in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and even 80s are actually in the most productive stage in their lives. You think about it. So I remind myself of that.
I love it. Pat, that has been so amazing and such an uplifting note at the end, of possibility, of being limitless, of why not, and finding joy in the journey. Pat, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us.
Thank you for what you do and instilling and reminding people that we do have limitless possibilities.
We do. Thank you, my darling. And for all those amazing golden nuggets of juicy goodness, thank you from all of us. And thank you to everybody who's listening in. We hope you find joy in the journey. We hope you also find people to help today, get up and do something active and say, why not? Tap into your own limitless potential with why not? So do that. Enjoy it, and we will see you again soon for more Limitless Potential.